Federal government last week announced its formal approval and receipt of a $300 million loan facility from the International Development Association of the World Bank to kick off the Nigeria Mortgage Financing Corporation due to launch this month. We discussed this and what this could mean for Nigeria's real estate space going forward with Damola Akindolere. He's the general manager at Alphamid Property Development Company. Thank you so much for taking the time out to join us. Now, here we are again. We've taken, Nigeria has taken another loan facility for the housing space. We're looking at $300 million US. How do you see these funds being deployed? We know some will go to some, I understand, microfinance banks, and it will also be used to kick off the mortgage refinancing company.
Thank you for having me. This is definitely a game changer for the industry. Part of the things we expect to see is that the federal government has decided to allocate certain resources to different sectors. So from what the Honorable Minister said last week, it's expected that you would have a portion of that amount going into microfinance housing, micro-social housing, and you'd also have a portion of that going into providing technical capacity, because that's one of the things that's lacking in the industry today. So a $10 million facility will be provided to provide technical assistance to deliver some of these objectives. But more importantly is the fact that you will be able to free up liquidity from primary mortgage lenders who can now transfer mortgage assets into the refinancing company and then can continue to originate loans, therefore creating a bit more aggressive market that would allow for you and I to access mortgage loans irrespective of some of the challenges that we have in the economy today.
Now, talking about accessing mortgage finance loans with all this money that's been spent, but with it still being spearheaded by the federal government, aren't you concerned about the bureaucracy, red tape, how government works sometimes? They have all these policies, but when it gets to the implementation stages, the process just gets so slow.
There is expectations, and because this is a private sector driven initiative, though being guaranteed by the government, I do expect to see a bit of more efficiency in that process as well. Some of the things that you'd also need to take into consideration is the recent deadline for recapitalization of the primary mortgage institutions. Therefore, that would further put pressure on the system to ensure that we have well-capitalized mortgage institutions that can also render mortgage services to potential subscribers and off-takers for real estate housing across the country. So, in terms of efficiency, because it's private sector driven, I do expect to see a bit more efficiency than when you have the regular transaction going through the government bureaucratic process.
Okay, now how soon would we see an impact on this market? Because Nigeria's annual, according to analysts, annual housing demand is about 700,000 units. We're doing about 100,000 right now. So at what point would we begin to say, yes, we know that people are getting mortgage, they're getting loans, they have access to money, and then we're looking at this more housing units being built?
Well, because the first leg of the transaction is already in place. So already you have primary mortgage institutions rendering mortgage services to potential customers. So what you need to have now is, after the recapitalization exercise, you have a transfer of those assets. So I believe between now and Q4 of 2014, I expect to see some impact. There's great expectations that the mortgage refinance program would contribute an extra 75,000 housing to Nigeria housing stock. And it's also expected to create at least 300,000 direct jobs, because you all know that you and I would agree that infrastructure and housing,
construction hands will be needed.
Exactly, it's labor intensive, and those are the biggest drivers of labor in any economy around the world. So we do expect to see that within the next 1 year.
Okay, let me ask you this: who are those people, category or class of people that will be able to afford these housing units that we're going to see on board? Now, you go to some, because it's not like we don't build houses. You go to some parts of Lagos and you see all these housing units, many of them empty, and you just wonder who were these houses built for in the first place. So this one that we're going to see from the mortgage refinancing company, who are those who can afford it?
Well, I think the real problem in Nigeria is that we always like to talk about the supply side of the business. The supply side is where you have developers developing housing stocks to satisfy demand in the market. But really, there is a demand side of the business, which means, can these people afford to buy some of those houses that are being put up in the market? So what I expect to see is, according to recent statistics by the African Development Bank, the middle income earners account for 23% of the Nigerian population. And therefore, you do understand that they wouldn't have housing needs that must be met. So if the mortgage refinance company comes into place, profiling the middle income earners, That's people that work with professional companies within the age range that still have between 25 to 30 years to retirement. I do believe these are the category of people that should be first beneficiaries to have housing, to have access to the mortgage refinance loans coming into the market.
We can have it simultaneously where we have the middle, perhaps middle income class or lower end income class with the low class earners.
Well, the thing is this.
Everybody needs shelter.
Yeah, but social housing is the responsibility of the federal government. It's all around the world. In Brazil, they have products that offer 100% mortgages to some of the citizens. So it's very important for us to realize that that sector is within the exclusive rights of the federal government to take care of. However, having said that, they have done something really very innovative. What they've decided to do is to dedicate funds in tranches. And I'm aware that the Honorable Minister said there would be $25 million that would be put into
the microfinance
microfinance, and also there will be a $25 million guarantee in place, targeted at people that cannot afford to provide collaterals or alternative securities for them to access the mortgages on their,
But as an industry expert, are you optimistic that this will go well? I'm not sure if we've set timelines, but there's a lot of money on the table and to deal, so perhaps.
Well, to be honest, we're at this point in the market where we do need a game changer. And I'm excited and I'm optimistic. For example, we have a project along the Lekki axis that has a very particular class of people that we profile. They work with professionals. And if these professionals cannot get mortgages, then definitely that puts us out of business. But we're optimistic and we hope that some of our developments would form a good chunk.
Okay, well, fingers crossed on that. We'll see how long that plays out. Thank you so much, Damola, for sharing, giving us a better perspective on this. Damola Akindolire, General Manager at Alphamid Property Development Company, looking at a recent $300 million loan taken to help boost Nigeria's housing sector.